Hey, Hawkeye fans, Chad Leistikow of the Des Moines Register at Kinnick Stadium. Good to be back here at Kennington Smith, my colleague at the Register. Last time we podcasted from here was not much fun after the Hawkeyes lost to Nebraska. We won't talk about that, though. Hawkeyes are beating the tails off Nebraska in the baseball diamond over here. So take that, Huskers. Just kidding. Kennington, welcome. It was I had a fun time watching this. I know there were a lot of injuries today. And, what, 3/5 or 4/5 of the offensive line was out, 3/4 of the defensive line was out. But I felt like I learned a lot, and I enjoyed it here.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, outside of the terrible weather, let's just take
Yeah.
a quick moment for the fact that it's late April and this is supposed to be a spring game, yet I'm walking into Kinnick and snow flurries are falling from the sky. So that part wasn't very fun. But otherwise, I agree with you. I thought it was a good scrimmage. I thought it was pretty informative. I think that a lot of times spring practice and these final spring games or spring scrimmages, you can't find many sweeping declarations just because a lot of times position battles are not settled in spring. It's more so about figuring out who's going to be in the mix going into summer and going into the fall. But I think that today shed a lot of light on some positions of interest. And we did get a chance to learn about where certain guys fit on the depth chart and what Iowa might be doing in this spring portal window and going into the summer. So I think it kind of exceeded my expectations a little bit in terms of what I thought that I was going to learn today. And I think it is shaping up to be a really important summer period for Iowa's program for where they want to go this fall.
All right, let's just off the top start with injuries, just so everyone knows who wasn't here, didn't follow, knows who was out, and that way that puts into context what we're talking about today, the performances, whatnot, who was out. So do you have the list in front of you, Kennington, or do I need to pull it up? Do you know who was out? Well, I can start. I know Mason Richmond was out. Connor Colby, you're on mute. Maybe that's why I can't hear you.
Oh yeah, I've been talking this whole time.
Oh, we're rusty, man. This is like our first podcast or something. All right, you start. Go ahead.
All right, floor is yours. On the offensive side, we have starting with the line and working outwards: Connor Colby, Mason Richmond, Dejon Parker, Nico Ragaini, and Jacob Bostic, and Seth Anderson. So
Mislinski was out too, right?
And Mike Mislinski. So at least two starters, possibly three on the offensive line, and one key reserve behind Logan Jones, and then potentially two starting receivers and one reserve, and Bostic were out. And then on the defensive side, to your point, Logan Lee, Noah Shannon were out. Joe Evans was a limited participant. He did dress out but did not participate in 11-on-11s. And then Y.A. Black was also out.
Yeah, I mean, that's 4 of your 5 best defensive linemen, maybe your top 4 returning defensive linemen. Deontay Craig, I'd throw him in there. But yeah, and then don't forget, you think about Nick Jackson isn't here yet. Rusty Feth isn't here yet. These are guys that it just wasn't the same lineups we're going to see. However, Kennington, that gives us a backdrop to talk about the passing game, I feel like. Let's start there. I mean, the back 7, other than Jackson, was pretty much here. I mean, the secondary was all out there. DeJean, Wampa, Schulte, Castro, and then we'll get to the rotating cornerbacks, starting with Jamari Harris, and then of course Jay Higgins and Kyler Fisher were out there. So they were thrown against starting secondary, and I thought 7-on-7 and an 11-on-11, and I really thought the passing game was impressive to me. That was my initial reaction. I mean, I'm used to seeing the spring like just being like a bunch of dud throws, in traffic, batted down, balls batted at the line of scrimmage, sacks. I didn't really see it. There was a lot of completions and a lot of it to tight ends.
Yeah, I mean, the 7-on-7s, I think, in my opinion, it got off to a bit of a slow start. It seemed like there were a lot of like underneath kind of routes to the tight ends. But then once it got to be the second the first 11 on 11s and then the 7 on 7s after that, it definitely started to pick up. I think my big takeaway is just like how deep the tight end room is. I think we understand Luke Lachey, Eric All are going to be really good pass catchers and really good options. But I thought Addison Ostrenga probably had the best day of almost anybody especially on offense. I think last year I kind of looked at him as more of just like a blocking tight end. That was kind of his role last year. I mean, he was the third tight end who spent a lot of special teams. And then when Laporta went down, Lachey was the one catching the passes, and Addison was mainly in there blocking. But I thought he showed a lot today as a receiver. There was the highlight of the day was a pass from Deacon Hill that he kind of threaded the needle and hit Ostrenga in stride. He lined up in the slot, beat his man, caught it in stride, and ran for another 20 yards into the end zone. So I thought that he showed some explosiveness and pass catching ability and some versatility as well throughout the day. So you have three really good tight end options, and I think that is going to supplement what is lacking at receiver. Eric All was limited in 11 on 11s, but he lined up in a few snaps, and he lined up in the slot. He lined it up on the line. Lachey was on the boundary. He was on the slot. He was on the line. So there are kind of like three tight ends that are kind of cross-training in that Sam Laporta role that we saw last year where he was lining up at receiver to facilitate some injuries at receiver. So those are three options there that I think could kind of help fill that void. It's obviously not the same as having starting Power 5 caliber wide receivers in those spots. So that's not to say that those three guys can be, full-time wide receivers in addition to being tight ends as well. But I do think it's encouraging that, there's some position versatility there, and you have, some capable pass catchers.
Yeah, I mean, the last time Iowa was really loaded at tight end was 2018. Of course, Hawkinson and Fant as seniors. I'm sorry, before that, not as seniors, but as third-year players before they went to the NFL draft. And that team was really, really effective offensively. I mean, that was over 30 points per game. Really just kind of – that was a really good team, and they lost a lot of close games. So it can be done to build around the tight ends. It's still not ideal. Iowa's going to need help at receiver. But, there were some walk-ons I thought that jumped out. I'm not going to say that any of them are solutions, but it was kind of interesting. We didn't really see much of Alec Wick, right? But there were a lot of other names that popped up.
Matt Johnson had a nice catch over DeGene, I believe, and Graham Friedrichsen.
Yeah, he had one of the best catches of the day.
Had a really nice catch as well. Yeah. So that was something I was looking out for. Was before any conversations of walk-on receivers making an impact, you have to see them win and create separation against Iowa's defensive backs. And I'm not going to say there was a lot of it, but there were some nice plays on balls made by some of those guys. So they didn't have like a bad day, or they weren't getting, completely clamped today. So I thought some guys made some nice plays and had some nice days.
And to me, the 7-on-7 is where my eyes went early. And it was kind of interesting. We got to talk to Cade McNamara for quite a while afterwards. And he kind of said that they did a lot of 7-on-7 this spring. I think part of that was because of the offensive line injuries. It's hard to run, three teams of 11-on-11 without, with just 6 or 7 healthy bodies in the line. But also, I think it was a stress of getting McNamara as many reps as he could, because he wasn't going to play 11-on-11 because of he's still not quite there from the knee injury. No need to risk him. I think that's how they're treating McNamara. They're treating him as kind of like almost like a big league or NFL star. Like you've got him here. You don't have to you just got to get him healthy. And so that's how they treated him. And they got him a ton of 7-on-7 reps. And I thought he was terrific in 7-on-7. I don't know what you thought, but I mean, I thought his very first pass of the day was like, oh wow, that looks different. Just a zipped Luke Lachey. That was a big gainer. Does such a nice job, like looking off the safeties or looking off whoever, and then adjusting and throwing to somebody. Now, obviously, he has to have time to throw, and we'll get into maybe some of the blocking. We don't. Again, it was a backup offensive line, but I thought in the 11-on-11 the blocking was pretty good. But beside the point, what did you think of McNamara before I get into it too much here in what we saw from him in 7-on-7?
Yeah, I thought he had a good day. I think I'll also put Eric All into that mix of what you said about kind of having players on a pitch count a little bit. I think when you understand that you really are going to need them for fall camp when you're ramping up for the season, it's kind of one of those things where, especially as old as they are and as accomplished as they are, you don't need them to take every single rep in spring practice for you to feel confident that they're going to be ready when it gets real in the fall. And I'm not going to say that it's a good thing in Cade's case that he hasn't been participating because you want him out there, but I do think that it created an opportunity for the two quarterbacks behind him to get a lot of reps with the first team, more than they would have had he been healthy. And that's a position of interest because, as I've said on previous shows, history has indicated that Iowa will need more than one quarterback if they're going to be successful. Look at 2021, you look at what happened last year, so you got to develop depth behind that position as well. But I thought he had a good day. I thought he was very decisive. He had, I would probably say, maybe like one bad decision. I think it was a tip ball in the end zone that ended up getting intercepted. But other than that, I thought he was decisive. He knew where he wanted to go. There wasn't a lot of like holding the ball and not really knowing where he wanted to put it. I thought his accuracy was fine as well. So obviously, it's a different beast when there's a pass rush and the bullets are flying. But I thought for what we saw today, I think fans should be encouraged with having him behind center. And, what you said before, I was going to go into the portal looking for receivers. Kirk Ferentz said that today. So they're going to try to get some more weapons around him on the perimeter and, continue to build this offense out.
Yeah, I think you got to get, if you can get one, obviously as good as you can get. I don't know who that is, but get one. And it sounds like Ferentz wants to get a cornerback as well. So one wide receiver, one quarterback are kind of the target here in this portal period. If you can get one, get Seth Anderson healthy, I'm still really optimistic about Seth Anderson. I thought Deontay Vines, the only scholarship guy healthy today, I thought he looked really good. McNamara in that 7-on-7 period, man, he threw, I thought his best ball of the day was a touchdown pass to Deontay Vines. I mean, he dropped it in there on that near end zone that from where we were watching, and did the same to Eric All on the other side. A really perfect pass, tight coverage, but right on the money. It's just what you want to see. I feel like Kennington, not to get too hyped up about 7-on-7, but just more so the quotes, the context, hearing about how he's coming in at 4 a.m. The recovery's on track, doing great. I really don't feel like the Cade McNamara acquisition that we learned about in early December could have gone any better to this point in late April for the Hawkeyes, because I feel like we're exiting spring ball with Iowa feeling really good about its quarterback position, which is a huge, huge development.
Right. And it has not always been like that. It hasn't been like that for several years now. I mean, going into 2020, it was, how do we replace, replacing Nate Stanley, is it going to be Petras going into a COVID year? And then going into 2021, can Petras take the next step? And then going into last year was, again, can Petras take the next step? Can Alex Padilla push him? Can Joe Labus come along? And then this year, like you said, it's solidified who the starter is. And I think there's a healthy competition there for number 2 as well. And you're bringing in Marco Lainez, who people are, pretty high on as a quarterback prospect. I don't think anybody's expecting him to be in the mix this fall, but that's somebody for the future to keep an eye on. So again, you have to see it on the field, but Iowa's quarterback situation has been subpar the last few years. And at the first available opportunity that Kirk Ferentz and the staff had to upgrade that position after the kind of doubling down, they went and they did it. And it seems like it's paying some early dividends. So it is early days. It's probably, in the grand scheme of the picture, I mean, it's probably like 25% of the way there. Of between winter, spring, summer is going to probably be, another 25%. And then the last half, the majority is going to be in fall camp. But comparatively to the conversations about the quarterback position a year ago today, you have to feel like it's a substantial step forward.
Yeah, and don't forget Drew Stevens. Cade McNamara, was was not healthy going into last season for Michigan, and that's obviously a contributing factor why he didn't win the job over J.J. McCarthy and what led him to Iowa City. So that injury in effect sort of helped his path to Iowa City. So good development there. And like you alluded to, Kennington, Deacon Hill, I didn't know anything. I didn't know what to expect at all from Deacon Hill. I didn't know what we'd see. He's a big dude. Doesn't look like the traditional quarterback. Kind of looks like a fullback almost. But man, he's pretty athletic and he's got a good arm. And I mean, Kirk Ferentz said he's ahead of Joe Labus right now. And how notable is that? I mean, basically, and that tells me that there's a lot of John Budmeyer influence here, because I feel like this system is kind of, I mean, McNamara and Hill, both Budmeyer guys. So there's a reason he's making $325,000 this year. I think Budmeyer has a little hand in this offense, and I think these guys are developing pretty nicely in that.
Yeah, I want to give myself a small pat on the back here, because
Please do.
After the coordinator availability, I wrote about the backup quarterback competition, and I said, even before what we found out today, I said in an article that I personally felt like there was a legitimate competition for number 2. And then when we had our podcast, I said, even though Joe Labus quarterbacks Iowa in the bowl game, he does not have that many more reps in Iowa's offense than Deacon Hill, because he's been the scout team quarterback all of this time. So I felt like there was an opportunity for Hill to come in and really push him. And he came out and he was running with the ones to start practice, which we both thought was notable. And you asked Kirk about it in the presser, and he said, yeah, I mean, if the season were today, he would be the number 2 guy. And I think what's notable about that, and a fan pointed this out to me on Twitter, we kind of looked at each other and we really didn't consider it in this way, but the fact that 2 new quarterbacks are the top 2 guys in the room is notable. And when you think about what's been said about how difficult Iowa's offense is to understand, and Brian Ferentz said on Thursday that the offense has not changed and is not going to change, and still Deacon Hill has been able to come in such a quick amount of time and learn enough and execute enough to surpass Labus as the number 2, I think is something to be noted. And like you said, he showed some accuracy today. He showed some things. He moved better than what I thought he would for his size. And he's still learning. Kirk Ferentz said it, and we got a chance to talk to Deacon after the practice, and he said it as well. Just the verbiage is completely different. The formations, the responsibility at the line of scrimmage, all of those things are completely new for him. And he also said that the amount of reps that he's getting at Iowa is like night and day compared to the reps that he was getting at Wisconsin in terms of the volume of reps. So he's still very green in terms of his quarterback development. So the fact that he's been able to come in and become the number 2 with limited time, I think is a positive as well. So that's not to say that Labus is completely out of it. Kirk Ferentz said it's completely and still wide open. So I think it's healthy to have a real competition for that number 2 spot, and you have a solidified starter in Cade McNamara as well. So, like I said, a few seconds ago, I think comparatively the quarterback room is in a much better place than it was last spring, and it's going to be really interesting to see how this continues to develop throughout the summer and the fall.
And I thought Joe Labus looked pretty decent. I mean, I thought he looked like an improved quarterback from from what we've seen in previous spring games and Kids Day, and even in the bowl game. I mean, he had a little bit more of a presence in the pocket to him, and I talked to him afterwards too, and he does feel like the game is slowing down for him. So again, I feel like this is Marco Linez was here today, by the way. So I feel like a healthy quarterbacks room. For those wondering who saw Spencer Petras on the field, he was working with the team. He is working with the team. He's obviously on the roster, not going to play, not a player, but he is on the roster and is helping with the offensive line. So that's kind of an interesting development. I think Labus said that he's going to help with the quarterbacks, in the fall, but for now he's in the O-line room, so that's kind of interesting. Hopefully I can, we can talk to Spencer at some point and dig more into that, but kind of neat that he's sticking around to help the team. And again, I just think that the quarterback room is in a healthy place, doing great. If hopefully Labus sticks around, I'd assume he will. He's a step away from potentially being number 2, and who knows where McNamara, his health does go eventually. So, he's got a real chance, I think, to play this year. And then, of course, Linez will probably be a scout team guy this year, but who knows? So, we've talked tons about the offense here. Let's go another 9-10 minutes here at Kennington. But anything else stand out to you today outside of the quarterbacks and passing game?
I thought Logan Jones had a good day. I thought that the timing of his snaps were sound. I thought he had some good blocks. I think in a lot of ways, it's kind of ironic that last year he was at the center of all of this dysfunction on the offensive line. And then this spring, he's been like the one constant on the offensive line. Like there's injuries to the left of him. There's injuries to the right of him. There's players moving positions. Jennings Dunker today lined up as starting tackle. So that's like a new development. He's been inside this entire time. Now he's kind of shifting outside to fill some holes. I thought Logan Jones had a good day. It kind of coincides with what we've heard about him in terms of having a good spring. So that's something I wrote about this spring as well. I feel like his development is one of the more underrated storylines of this upcoming season. And it seems like he's a lot more comfortable manning that offensive line. So I thought that was another good development.
Yeah, good call on Jones. Aaron Graves, to me, was a standout. I mean, he gets a chance to start at defensive tackle, obviously with Logan Lee and Noah Shannon out, but I think he blew up the first play of the whole thing. He blew that up, and I think it was him. Yeah, I wrote it down. Caleb Johnson left, run to the left, blown up by Graves. So, Aaron was got to talk to him afterwards. There is a video up on Hawk Central. I didn't write about him, but I probably will in my 10 final spring thoughts. He's up to 290, 6'5", 290. Big dude, man. Mean dude. Goes full speed. This defensive line, if they're healthy, it's going to be pretty impressive. And it sounds like Jeremiah Pittman also, per Kirk Ferentz. I think Phil Parker even said this too, right? One of the bright spots of the spring, one of the high, guys who's really taken a big step forward. So you got to feel and couple that with the fact that Phil Parker the other day said that he feels the best about the defensive line of all his position groups. So you got to feel really good there, even though there were injuries today. So that was a plus. Anything else? We didn't get to see Tory Taylor punt. Did talk to him afterwards, but the kickers were money. Talk about a departure from last year.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Like what did Kirk say? He said last year was the worst display of kicking that he had seen in spring. And this year, Stevens and Blom were both like 5 for 5. Like there wasn't a missed kick at all today. And LeVar Woods said that Aaron Blom has also been cross-training at punter. And the reason why Tory Taylor did not participate today was because the coaches wanted to have an opportunity to see some other punters, just develop a little bit of depth. And Aaron Blom got a chance to punt with the starting unit today. So it's not, it's not smokescreen. Like Aaron Blom is really coming on and impressing. And not that he's going to kick or punt this year unless an injury happens, but there is a question of what's going to happen once Tory Taylor goes to the NFL. And maybe the solution is on the roster. Maybe it's not, but there is somebody to potentially keep an eye on in that kicker or that punter spot should something happen, which was not the case last year. I mean, there was not a solidified kicker. And if Tory were to pull a hamstring or something were to happen, they would be, I will be without a punter too. So there is somebody there as insurance that could kick or punt, which I think is notable.
Don't talk like that. Tory Taylor is invincible, and you know it. I had the quote up, and of course I scrolled off and missed it, but what Kirk said was basically like, we didn't think we had anybody last year, kicker. Much different story. Kennington, you were monitoring the DBs. Obviously, Cooper DeJean, he played solely corner today, from what I saw, but Phil Parker seemed to be searching at that other spot.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting. I assumed that it was going to be Jamari Harris solely at that other spot opposite of Cooper, but it was Jamari, it was TJ Hall, it was Deshaun Lee. Devin Hilson was getting some rest with the twos, as was Brendan Diaz Fernandez. So I was kind of questioning, like, okay, is Jamari Harris also on a pitch count because he's recovering from an injury? Do the coaches want to develop depth at that cornerback spot and give some more chances to one with the ones? Maybe it's a little bit of both. But again, that depth component of the cornerback position is still something that has not been completely resolved yet. And in the middle of Kirk's presser asking about transfer portal activity and receivers, Kirk said that they're going to search for receivers in the portal, but then he kind of added in, like, we're still thin at cornerback. So that's going to be a position that we're going to target as well, kind of getting better on the perimeter. So I do believe that Iowa has very strong frontline starters in the secondary. I do believe that with Jamari Harris gets to be that 100% that he is, he's going to be a standout alongside with Cooper. But after that, it kind of gets to be a little hairy in terms of who's going to be next should something happen. So I thought that was pretty notable, and it's definitely going to be something to watch in this spring transfer window.
A couple of roster notes as we wrap up here. It sounded like it was very optimistic. We didn't know the extent of Daedron Parker's injury, but Kirk did say he would be back in June. So that's really good news. I think it sounded like everybody would be back for the summer. So that's a really positive development, except for Eli Miller, fullback. Sounds like he will miss the season. He was, Iowa loses Monty Potabom. Eli Miller was kind of that next man in. He is out for the year. So it'll be interesting to see, at least it seems that way, what Iowa does. Maybe it goes away from fullback a little bit more. Was Hayden Large? Was he a tight end?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hayden Large was at tight end, but like Kirk also kind of hinted
kind of alluded. Yeah.
That he could be the potential starting fullback. They didn't go, I don't know if they went fullback at all today, maybe a handful of times. So maybe we just didn't see it. So to your point, maybe they might just kind of go away from it. But it does look like Hayden Large, who has no ties to Hayden Fry or anything Iowa related, for those who might have been wondering. It's just a coincidence that that's his name.
Yeah.
Could be the potential starting fullback next year.
Yeah, I mean, I know I'm probably going to get a lot of hate for this, but I would be totally fine if Iowa went away from fullback. Yeah. I just don't, come on, let's try to move into the 21st century. Couple other roster notes. Unfortunately, Justice Sullivan will be medically retired, or has been, I believe. They finally, or they got approval for it. Had the long COVID. That's very, obviously very, has to be really tough for him. Never really got started here at Iowa. And then Kyson Van Voogd moves from tight end to offensive line. So, you got a 6'6", 247-pound right tackle out there later in the scrimmage. So just basically a project, roster note, mentioning it. No need to discuss further. That's about it, Kennington. We will have our Wednesday radio show, of course, and I'm sure we'll recap some more aspects of the spring game. But I don't know. I'll throw it to you here to finish up before we go get some good dinner together tonight.
Yeah, for sure.
Anything else stand out?
Yeah, I think I'm going to go back to the offensive side. I think on defense, we pretty much know what we're going to get. I thought the running backs had a good day. That's a position group that we haven't had a chance to talk to this spring, but I thought, Caleb Johnson was Caleb Johnson. Leishon Williams looked really good today. It seems like in these kind of open scrimmage availabilities, he kind of pops every single time. He looks really good. Kirk Ferentz said he's had a great spring. He ran a lot with the ones. Jazian Patterson looks like he's taken a step forward and is going to factor into it as well. And Terrell Washington didn't get a lot of work today, but it does seem like he's a promising prospect as well. So you want to talk about a difference between last spring and this spring. Last spring, there were 2 running backs on scholarship, and it was kind of like, okay, we're waiting to see what we have in the summer and see what comes of this position. And this year, it looks like a position of strength. So I'll be writing a little bit more about the running backs, but I thought that was notable as well.
Yeah, stay tuned. I'll have my, 8 or 10 final spring thoughts sometime early next week for that. And of course, we're going to dig our heels in for the NFL draft coming soon. Should be a big week for the Hawkeyes. Also, something to monitor, Kennington, is the transfer portal window is open. Obviously, Iowa's looking to bring guys in, but it's always the time of year when a name or two from your team, the one you guys are following, pops into the portal as well. So don't be surprised. I mean, I don't know of any names that will go in, but it happens inevitably that someone or some two will put their name into the portal just to look for another opportunity elsewhere. I have no idea who that would be at this point, but just know that possibility is out there.
Yeah, and also Iowa will not be getting caught flat-footed in this portal window like they did last year. Their eyes are wide open. So guys are gonna be leaving presumably, but you can expect Iowa's going to try to be bringing in some guys as well. So there's nothing to freak out about. It's just what it is in college football. I think at this point, every program in the country can expect at least 10% of their roster to enter into the portal at any given time, whenever the windows open in the winter or in the spring. So just kind of the nature of the beast. But I think Iowa's going to do all that they can to make sure that their roster is well-rounded going into the summer.
Thank you all for joining us in this post-spring football podcast on YouTube at Hawk Central. For Kennington Smith, Chad Leistikow of the Register saying so long. We will talk to you Wednesday night on Hawk Central. Take care.